I want to talk tonight about making graphs and labeling graphs and so on using Microsoft Excel. And the first thing I want to mention to you is that if you are a Montgomery College student, you can download a copy of Microsoft Excel and the other Microsoft Office products for free because you're a Montgomery College student. To do that, you would go to as if you're going to log onto your email, and you can see there's a button right here that says install Office, and you click on here and it gives you the option to install the Microsoft Office programs, including Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. So if you haven't done that yet, you really should do that because Excel and Word are both useful programs. And assuming you have done that, this is what the Microsoft Excel spreadsheet looks like. If you've never used Microsoft Excel before, there are boxes for you to enter data and text and so on. For tonight, for instance, we're going to be interested in entering pressure and volume data. So I'll just label this column right here as volume, so I know what I'm entering, and I'll spell it right, volume. And then the one next to it, pressure. And then I can enter the data points underneath each of these. So I can type the data points in here, 20.0, 17.5, and 15.0, and so on, all the way down until I've entered all my data. Now I've entered my data, and one of the things they mention in your lab write-up is formatting the cells. I'm doing this on a Mac, and it's a little bit different than on the PC that they used in your lab documentation. To format the cells on a Mac, you want to highlight the cells, then you're going to control click, and then there's the option to format the cells. And I can say, if I go to numbers, I only want one decimal place on all the numbers. I click OK, and it gives me one decimal place for everything. Now we want to make a graph of this, and one thing I want to point out to you is that when you do this with Excel, by default, the leftmost column will always be your X data, and the rightmost will always be your Y data. So X and Y. So when we go to plot this, I'm going to highlight my values. And again, this is a little bit different on the Mac than on the PC. So I'm going to go to Insert and Scatter Plot. That's this little thing here with all the dots, X, Y, scatter. And I click on it, and I want the one with the 3 dots. And it gives me this. And that's my plot. Now some things I can change. I can make the entire graph bigger. Or if I just want the graph area to be bigger or smaller, I can highlight that and move it in, and I can slide the whole graph over and so on, like that. Another thing you might want to do is change the scale. You can see it goes all the way up to 25 on the bottom here, but my data starts at 20, so I can go here and on the horizontal axis, double click, and it gives me minimum and maximum. So I'm going to change the maximum to 20.0, and the minimum, since it goes to 5, I'll set the minimum to about 3 and hit enter, and it's rescaled. And I could do the same thing for the y-axis if I wanted to as well. Now we're going to want to add labels to the x and y axis also. So this is one of the places where it's a lot different for the Mac versus the PC. For the Mac, you want to go right here where it says add chart element. Click on add chart element and axes titles, and I'll go to primary horizontal first, and it'll give me the option to label that axis right there. So since this is my volume, I'll go in there and I'll type volume. I don't want all capitals, I want volume. And I don't know what the units are because I don't know what the units are where I get this data from. I just copied it from somewhere. So we would put volume, and wherever the units are, we would put the units in parentheses so people know what volume units we are using. And we can do the same thing for the horizontal axis, the vertical axis as well. So I go here, axis title, primary vertical, and it gives me the option, and the vertical is pressure, And again, units would be included, and I don't know the units for that as well. So we've got our volume and our pressure units labeled on our axes, X and Y. We could put a chart title if we wanted to, and I could put P versus V. I know in your lab it says you don't usually use a chart title on a scientific graph. That may or may not be true, but if you want to do it, it's right like that. If you wanted to get rid of it, you just click on it and delete, and it's gone. The place where the Mac is a little bit different than the PC is when you want to add a trend line. To add the trend line, I'm going to click on one of the points, and it's control click. So I push the control button down, click, and I get options including add trend line. And now it by default went to linear, but I don't want to do a linear for this one because you can see that it's curved. In this case, we're going to go to our trend line options, and we're going to want it to be either a power like that or polynomial like that. And by clicking on polynomial, we can choose 2 or 3 or 4 even to see which is the best fit. In truth, it's going to be what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to be a second order to fit this curve. Now, if I want to know the equation for the curve, my options are a little bit off the screen, so I'm going to have to move the document so I can show you. You can see down the bottom here, there are options like, let me see, display equation on chart. And that gives me this, like that. And I would like it to be a little bit bigger. Change the font size here. It's control click again, and then font. And I'm going to make that 12, I guess, and much easier to see. And you can see that's the equation it gives me. It's giving me something to a negative 0.94 power. I think your lab procedure tells you not to use the one that we did, but to use a different one. Let me show you right now. I'll actually take that back. I double checked, and we should use the power one that we used. So control click, format trend line, we used power. And it's giving us this as the equation of the curve. And it's basically to the negative 0.94 power, essentially to the negative 1. So it's y equals 1 over x times a constant. Now, another thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to plot this data in a slightly different format. So let me show you how we do that also. So I'm going to move this graph out of the way so I have room to work. What I'm going to want to do is plot 1 over v. So I'm going to take my volume data and I'm going to convert it to 1 over v. Now I could do the calculations on a calculator for each one, but there's an easier way to do this using Excel. And I want to show you that right now. When you want Excel to do a calculation, you put an equal sign in the box. So I put equal sign, and then I'm going to put 1 divided by, and then I'm going to click on box D5. So this is going to give me 1 divided by whatever's in D5. And I hit it, and that's my answer. Now, I could do that for each and every single one of these, but what's easier is I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to drag it down, and I'm going to paste it for all of those. And I just did that calculation for all of these volumes. So this is 1 over, you can see 1 over D5, 1 over D6, 1 over D7, and so on. So that's all of my 1 over V data. Now, I want to plot 1 over V versus pressure. And you'll remember I said before, the leftmost is always going to be my X. Well, now I have my pressure to the left of my volume. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, Apple C and Apple V. And now I'm going to make a plot of these two columns right here. 1 over V versus P. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to highlight my data, And then let me move this so you can see it again. So we're going to go to Insert. We're going to go to Scatter Plot, and here it is. Now, again, I can make this bigger, and I can shrink my graph in here a little bit so I have room to, hold on a second. It's not cooperating with me. Hold on. Why? There it is. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so that I have room for my labels. And you'll notice that it goes out to 0.25. I could change the scale like I did last time, and I could put in my labels. I'm not going to do that this time. I just want to show you that if I go and add a trend line this time, same thing. Click on one of the points, and what's the word I'm looking for? Control click and add trend line. And this time it's linear, and you can see it fits really, really well with a linear. And I'm going to display my equation on my graph and display equation. That's my equation, and I could change the font size again if I wanted to. Control click, and then I'll make it 14. Another thing that we can plot on here is something called the R-squared value. R-squared tells us how close to a straight line we really are. So an R-squared value of 1 is a perfect line. 0.999 is really, really close. So this data is really close to linear. So those are some of the important and basic things on making graphs with Excel, and they'll come in handy for use in your lab today. And it's really easy to figure out. If you have any questions, you can ask me or play around and try to do it on your own.